8 months ago, floating in the middle of the Cherry Creek Reservoir in Denver, a nude body was found. That body belonged to a poor immigrant woman from Mexico, Rosa Vallejos, who had gone missing a week prior. The peculiarity that presented itself was that all of her internal organs had been removed, and in their place, a lockbox. Exactly like the one they'd have resting on a table at the rinky-dinky snack bar at your local Little League baseball game. The lockbox had been taped closed with multiple layers of duct tape, a fact which speculation has led many to believe is indicative of the murderer's intent on keeping whatever was inside of that box dry. What was inside of the box? Polaroids. Hundreds of Polaroid pictures of, you guessed it, Rosa Vallejos. The pictures seemed to show that whoever had killed Rosa had stalked her for at least a week before killing her. Most of the photos were of her going about her day, shopping, picking up nieces and nephews from school. But in addition to these pictures, the killer photographed her throughout the process of murdering her and removing her organs. These particular photographs were never released to the public, only described as horrific and nauseating in the police statement. The one gruesome picture that they spoke of in detail was that of her nude body, floating in the water with her stomach already stitched up. How did the killer get that picture inside? That's what was left on everyone's mind after her body was found. Rosa was only the first. The second known victim was a 68-year-old black man named Alex Bennett. The same was done to his body as was done to Rosa's. Organs removed, replaced with the aluminum lockbox full of photos. However, instead of being found floating in a lake, Alex Bennett was found hung like a piece of meat in the back of a freezer truck parked in a parking lot of the police station. Similarly to the pictures of Rosa, these Polaroids depicted a long stalking phase, followed by photographs of the murder itself. Just like with poor Miss Vallejos, a photo was taken of the body after it had already been sewn up, as well as one of the body after it had begun to show obvious signs of being frozen. In referring to the security cameras of the parking lot, the driver of the vehicle was seen to be a male wearing a ski mask. After parking the freezer truck, he exited the car in a manner that allowed the bulky vehicle to block the view of the camera. The killer's third victim was a homeless, mentally ill 22-year-old man by the name of David Turner. The same was done to his body as the others. However, the strange elevation in this murder was that the killer proceeded to place the dead body in the car, douse the car in gasoline, and light it on fire. The body was burnt to a crisp, and the aluminum lockbox inside it had fused closed from the immense heat. This is where it gets weird. The photographs inside the aluminum lockbox showed minimal damage. In addition to the typical stalking, murdering, and butchering, the photos showed the already sewn up body, and the car being doused in gasoline and being lit on fire, and the body burning to a crisp. Nobody knows how these photos were taken and placed in a body. The charred corpse showed no signs of tampering, and even so, if it had, no one had a valid explanation for how the photos would have been placed in a fused lockbox. This is when the newspapers started going nuts. The killer got all kinds of nicknames: the camera killer, the Polaroid butcher, the stalking surgeon. Everyone in the area was perplexed, many even scared. But because the victims had been poor or undocumented or mentally ill and homeless, very few people really cared. The police said they were investigating, but they had no suspects, no witnesses, and no evidence that could have pointed a possible killer. The community was in sort of an anxious limbo. Everyone was worried that they might be the next unlucky victim, but they didn't know what they could do about it. I suppose the murderer wasn't satisfied with how scared the community was, because with this next killing, he chose a victim specifically to scare the community and seemingly to taunt the police. The body of an 8-year-old boy was found in a sandbox of a playground down the street from my apartment complex. His limbs had been staked into the cement beneath the sand, half burying his body, and his organs had been removed, replaced with a lockbox. But instead of sewing the body back up, the killer flayed the poor child's torso, pinning it open. The child's name was Benjamin Lyle. You may recognize that name as the child of Detective Lyle, the Denver police detective who had been assigned to these murders. When the lockbox was opened, however, there were no photos. Over the next week, Detective Lyle began receiving Polaroids, 5 to 10 at a time, in manila envelopes, delivered to a variety of places: his home, his work, his friends' homes that he would be visiting. These photos showed the usual stalking, but photos of the actual murder had yet to be sent. On the night of August 30th, Detective Lyle was found dead by his wife in their bedroom when she returned from her night at work as a night shift lead at one of the local Targets. He had put his service weapon in his mouth and pulled the trigger, ending his own life. The killer attacked dozens and dozens of photos of the murder and flaying of their child onto the ceiling above their bed. The general consensus is that Detective Lyle returned home from work, saw these photos, was overcome with grief, and killed himself. His wife, Karen Lyle, was taken into psychiatric care after having had a psychotic break caused by these events. A couple weeks pass, and the community is still reeling. Parents aren't letting their children out of the house. Barely anybody is going out at night. My particular chunk of the city turned into something of a ghost town. The streets were quiet, and the homeless people started to group together and began to live in a wealthier downtown area. Then, on the morning of September 17th, a manila envelope was found on the steps of the police department entrance. Inside, there was, you guessed it, an aluminum lockbox, in which there were Polaroids taken of the police investigation of the Benjamin Lyle crime scene at the nearby park, including particular photos of Detective Lyle falling to his knees, sobbing, near the scene. Following this, the police began an investigation into posts and social media about the killing, hoping to find a photo of someone taking Polaroid photos at the scene. After a week or so of searching, along with Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter, and even Reddit supporters, they found a slew of cell phone pictures of a middle-aged man wearing khaki pants and a wrinkled dress shirt, taking photos with an old camera. With further investigation, they discovered the man to be none other than Hector Brown, a 44-year-old man who had been fired from his job at a nearby Purina dog food factory in January. In my apartment complex, there are buildings across from one another, with a short sidewalk connecting them to another sidewalk that runs between two buildings to the parking lot. If I were to continue walking straight forward along the sidewalk connected to my apartment building, I would enter the patio of the apartment belonging to none other than Hector Brown. The police came and took him on September 29th, and I got to watch it all unfold from my apartment window. Everyone was taking pictures with their cell phones, so I'm sure if you really want to see a bunch of out-of-shape police officers carrying junk from the apartment to an evidence van, you can find them somewhere online. His apartment was a mess, filled with mostly junk, newspapers, old tools, broken furniture, and even scattered car parts. In addition to the miscellaneous junk and clutter, there was an immense amount of old camera equipment, as well as a large stockpile of Polaroid photo paper and over 20 still plastic-wrapped aluminum lockboxes. In one of those lockboxes, hidden underneath the removable floorboard, were countless more photos, depicting the stalking and murders of at least 4 more victims who had yet to be found. A few people from the apartment complex got courageous enough to venture past the police tape and into the apartment, but the police had picked it clean, looking for anything and everything. The only stuff left in place was clutter and newspaper scraps. The reason I'm writing this, the reason it's so scary to me is, last night I was woken up at 11:30 p.m. by someone at my door who introduced herself as Detective Patterson. She asked if she can come inside. I obviously let her in. She pulled a manila envelope from her suitcase in which there was an aluminum lockbox. Inside, there were photos of me at the grocery store, parking my car in the parking lot, in the gym at the apartment complex. There were even some that looked like they were taken inside of my apartment, some while I was sleeping. Detective Patterson was showing me this in hopes that it would calm me down. I don't know how any of you would have reacted, but this did anything but calm me down. It scared the shit out of me. I mean, I suppose there wasn't a reason to be that scared. They caught the guy. At least, I thought they did. This morning, during my morning routine, I noticed my trash can was full. So I grabbed a bag and started my way outside to toss the trash into the dumpster in the parking lot. On my way out, I nearly tripped over something outside of my door. I looked down to see a manila envelope with something bulky inside, with my name written in Sharpie on the yellow paper. I pick it up, I tear it open. Inside there was an aluminum lockbox. Inside of that, there were Polaroid photos. Some of people creeping through Hector Brown's apartment, some of Hector Brown being arrested, and even some through the window of my apartment, clearly showing Detective Patterson and I sitting on my couch, looking at the photos she brought me.